this meeting to order. Obviously, the Board of Education meeting for Monday, January 13th. Open Public Statement Act. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of this act, the school district of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in board administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough and Chatham Township, the Library of Chatham's, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP Online News. For attendance, Ms. Ciccarelli.
Here.
Ms. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Kenny. Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
And Ms. Weber. I have 4 present and accounted for. If anyone who can, if you'd stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is by the entry door. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item we have to do, and I know everybody forgets because the board election was back in the first week of November, but this is, if you're wondering why I called the meeting to order, it's because this is the board's reorganization with the fact that we have new board members. And in this case, we are very fortunate that 3 of our incumbents were reelected. 2 of them are here tonight, so if they will stand and then repeat after me or just read along with what I gave, we'll swear both Mike Valenti and Matt Gilfillan back to the board, if you wish, yeah. So if you want to just state your names, then read at the same time. You want to do them individually, we can?
He could read them.
Yep.
Well, I don't have to do it, because my name is spelled wrong on this.
Well, I'll correct it then.
I am now a Gilfillan. Ready to do this?
Yes, please.
Just say it.
Yep. You want to say it in unison, but just state your names.
Michael Valenti. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and the state under the authority of the people, so help me God. Do next.
Mike, you want to go, and then we'll do the second paragraph?
I, Michael Valenti, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education and am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, the next order of business, do I have any nominations for board president?
I nominate Jill Weber to be the president of Board of Education. Second.
Any others? All right, Jill Weber for board president. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Passes 7-0. Any nominations for board vice president?
And any nominations for? Yes. I nominate Matt Gilfillan. Second.
Any other? Matt Gilfillan for board vice president. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
Mr. Gilfillan?
Do I abstain?
It's up to you. You can vote yes for yourself, or if you vote no, you're still going to be vice president.
Mr. Gilfillan, whatever you spell there.
Yes.
No, but Mr. Gilfillan, yes, yes.
Agenda passes 7-0. I can now pass the board meeting over for you to run.
Let's go. You're in charge. Let's go.
You can just
Congratulations,
ask the
Mike.
nomination for those 2 agenda items.
Huh? Oh. I can do it?
Yeah, we just need a, yeah.
That's like for other, well, is there a section specifically called? Yeah, the organizational meeting action points. I'd like to move action items 1 and 2.
Pre-org items, number 1 and 2, Mr. Gilfillan,
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Valenti.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 7-0. Now you're into board president comments, or vice president comments.
I have 0. So we're going to administrative reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gilfillan. We're going to start off this evening with a few presentations. The best one is the first one, and that is from one of our high school students. Her name is Gabby Veccarelli. Did I get that right? Pretty close. So some of you may or may not know this, but every year the Speech and Theater Association of New Jersey sponsors a competition at Montclair State University, and hundreds of students from all across New Jersey attend this competition. And they perform. They perform monologues and dialogues, and they memorize Shakespeare passages, and they compete against one another. And just like any competition, the field gradually narrows, and eventually you have a winner who takes first place and is the best in the category. So tonight we have someone who won the very best monologue in the state of New Jersey, and that is Gabby, and she is going to perform that monologue to kick off our board meeting and the 2020 year. It's all yours.
Face the audience.
So I'll be performing the 2 monologues that I did first. My first selection is from Brighton Beach Memoirs by Neil Simon, the role of Nora. And my second selection is from Two Gentlemen of Verona by William Shakespeare, the role of Julia. How would you feel if your entire life depended on what your Uncle Jack decided? God, I wish Daddy were alive. He was so handsome, always dressed so dapper. His shoes always shined. I always thought he should have been a movie star, like Gary Cooper, only very short. Mostly, I remember his pockets. When I was 6 or 7, he always brought me home a little surprise, like a Hershey or a top. He'd tell me to go get it in his coat pocket. So I'd run to the closet and put my hand in, and there were all these terrific things in there, like juicy fruit gum or spearmint lifesavers, and bits of cellophane, and crumpled pieces of tobacco and movie stubs. And his gray suede gloves that he wore in the wintertime. Then I found his coat in Mom's closet, and I put my hand in the pocket, and everything was gone. It was emptied and dry cleaned, and it felt cold. And that's when I knew he was really dead. Go! Get you gone! And let the papers lie! Oh, hateful hands to tear such loving words, dangerous wasps to feed on such sweet honey. I'll kiss each several paper for amends. Mwah! Mwah! Look, here is writ, kind Julia. Unkind Julia, as in revenge of thy ingratitude, I throw thy name against the bruising stones, trampling contemptuously on thy disdain. And here is writ, love wounded Proteus. Poor wounded name. My bosom, as a bed, shall lodge trust thee until thy wound be thoroughly healed. Begone, good wind! Go not a word away, till I have found each letter in the letter, except mine own name, that some whirlwind bear unto a ragged, fearful hanging rock, and throw it thence into the raging sea. Lo, here in one line is his name twice writ. Poor, forlorn Proteus, passionate Proteus. To the sweet Julia, that'll tear away. And yet I will not, since so prettily he couples it to his complaining names. And thus I fold one on another. Now, kiss, embrace, contend, do what you will. Thank you.
Fantastic. Our second presentation is a holdover from December. Doug Walker, one of our assistant principals at the high school, was scheduled to be here that evening, but we had a bit of ice and snow, and we tried to hustle that meeting along. So we asked him to postpone his presentation until tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and this is the report that our high school staff gives on an annual basis to just report out on what the graduating class, most recent graduating class, went off and did, what their plans were when they left us in June. All you, Doug.
So tonight I have the pleasure of presenting the statistics and data from the class of 2019. Primarily the objectives is to apprise the board members and the public about the plans of our most recent graduates. And throughout the presentation, you'll notice that I highlighted some particular areas of interest, and I will of course respond to any questions that you may have. So the first point of data that we take a look at, usually on an annual basis, is our 3-year trend in terms of post-high school plans. And as you can see here in our class of 2019, we had 97% of our students who attended 4-year universities. 2% chose a 2-year option, and about 1% chose an other option. And that trend has increased slightly over the last 3 years and has remained fairly consistent over the last number of years. One of the areas that we take a look at when students matriculate to post-secondary institutions is we use a very common metric in the field of competitiveness of schools that's released by Barron's. And so Barron's ranks schools by their level of competitiveness. And more or less, competitiveness is really defined by the acceptance rate, the number of students who apply versus the percentage that are accepted is how they come up with these categories. And when looking at the class of 2019, and I must say this is also very consistent from prior years, that approximately 83% of our graduates attended the 3 most competitive categories of universities in the country. We broke out the lower competitiveness, and this year I segmented out international because it is not part of the Barron's rankings, the international, and we did have a large uptick in students that chose to attend international universities last year compared to other prior years more recently. Another area that we take a look at is GPA distribution. And here I broke the GPA into various bands. And what I really want to highlight here is that, contrary to what may be believed or spoken about, that most of our students have A averages or straight A averages, actually a vast majority of our students fall in the 3.0 to 4.0 range, with 167 seniors in that class falling in that range. That's a number that's This scale has been pretty consistent over the last number of years. And you can see the number of students that fall in each GPA band from the class of 2019. When we take a look at GPA bands, one area that I take a look at is when I look at the Barron's competitive rankings in categories, I look at what GPA bands of students are attending these schools, accepted to these schools. And what you find is that students from a variety of GPA bands are attending each of these institutions. And so what I find is that our most high achieving students don't all necessarily choose to matriculate to the most competitive school that they were able to get into. They actually spread themselves out across all the competitive landscapes. Likewise, in some of the most competitive schools, some of our students who don't have the most high achieving GPA are still able to find acceptance into these universities. There's a number of reasons for this, and in some cases, students choose to not necessarily go to the most competitive school that was on their list because of geographic interest, because of cost interest, because there's some advantage that they find at that university. Maybe it's because a lower competitive university will accept more of their advanced placement credits, which can then expedite their graduation. There's a variety of reasons that kids choose different paths, but we do see very clearly each year that students do spread themselves out amongst these competitive bands and don't just let GPA dictate where they fall. This is just another visual of that where I broke the GPAs into 3 bands, and you can see even in our lower and middle band that the trend in terms of competitive placement does seem to fall, is left-sided in terms of students, majority of the students still attending very high and most competitive universities, even at the lower bands. So I thought it was important to kind of give you a picture of what schools are we talking about when we talk about most competitive, highly competitive. I can tell you that this list changes every year, and it really does go by the number of applications versus the number of acceptances. So each year I do have to move schools from one list to the other. But here's just a sample of some popular schools amongst Chatham High School students that fit into each category, just so you can have a point of reference. And here is our very competitive and competitive list. In terms of region, we take a look at where our students are matriculating to around the country, also around the world. And a couple of points that I've noticed in this last year's class is that the number of students attending school on the East Coast actually dropped a bit from previous years. It's sort of been trending down, but the Midwest is spiking up a bit. So we had kind of an influx of students attending schools in the Midwest, and then fairly consistent numbers around the other areas. Variety of reasons for that. I can tell you that we have made a conscious effort in the counseling department to bring in schools that are of the same competitive category of the more popular universities that our students apply to, in order to broaden the reach so that kids can be exposed to other schools that have equal benefits or equal value, but maybe don't have such internal competition just amongst Chatham High School alone, and spread it out. And I like to think that that's part of the rationale and why we're seeing some choices outside of what we had seen in the past. We've also noticed a steady trend of students selecting public universities and a small decline in the choice of private universities. My experience has been a major factor of that sometimes is cost, and that's one of the reasons that we're seeing that trend. So one cohort of students that I take a look at is our special education population. So this represents the seniors in the class of 2019 that graduated with an IEP as special education students. And out of that cohort of students, we had 88% attend four-year universities, 5% two-year, and 7% who chose other or employment. When I looked at that cohort, this is their breakdown in terms of competitive placement according to Barron's, with approximately 65% of the students falling into the more competitive university placements. So in terms of applications, we processed 2,592 applications last year, class of approximately 300 students, 301. That equated to 1,277 acceptances from the whole. 965 early actions, 79 early decision applications, and 11 early decision too. So when I looked at that whole number of 2,592 and 1,277, the average is 8.3 average applications per student, with 4.4 average acceptance rate per student. When I looked at the data on each individual kid, number of schools they applied to, number of schools they were accepted to, the median acceptance rate for our students in that class was 64%. So 64% of their applications, they found acceptance. When we take a look at number of applications, how many schools are kids applying to? We've seen over the years a significant trend in increase of number of applications. Part of that's related to it's a lot easier to apply to a lot of schools now with the common application process. But what we've found when we look at this is that it can become anxiety driven and it can become stressful for students to try to manage a large number of applications. And what we have found when we look at this is that the students who choose a more concise list of applications have the greatest return. And so the students that fall into that 5 to 9 range have over 60% acceptance rate, the highest percentage rate. And that diminishes as you increase the number of applications. Our recommendations, and I just left a junior parent presentation about 45 minutes ago, is that when you make a list that is more concise, it represents schools that you've put a lot more effort into researching, you've probably visited them, you really have a good, strong handle on what they're looking for and how that matches with you, and it becomes also a manageable process when you're writing all their essay requirements and things like that. It results in a much better process for kids. So this text part, the text is a little small on this. I will share this presentation posted on the website tomorrow. But these are the colleges in Chatham High School that have received 30 or more applications from our students. So these are the schools where we have the most students applying to. So when we start to look at acceptance rates nationally among schools, we add this internal sort of, for lack of a better word, competition where we have a number of Chatham students all vying for a certain number of seats in the universities. So these were the most popular. And I did add on there the number of applications, how many kids in that pool were accepted, and how many kids actually chose to attend that school. So the next category that I've looked at each year are the second tier, the colleges that are receiving 20 to 29 applications. This is actually a two-slide list, but the number one school in this category was Drexel University, and you can see the trend there. And that's page 2. The top 10 most attended schools by the class of 2019 are included on this list. The number one school was Rutgers University with 12 students matriculating there. And specifically to New Jersey, these were the top matriculated New Jersey schools. So then I also take a look at standardized testing specific to the class of 2019. In the class of 2019, these were our total test takers for each assessment. 213 students took the SAT, and 160 took the ACT exam. The ACT. Sorry, the ACT is 213, right? And the SAT was 160. Apologize. I took a look at our mean SAT scores for the class of 2019, and you can see the first column represents the mean score for CHS and evidence-based reading and writing and math. Second column is the New Jersey mean, and the third column is the global. Here you see a similar chart for the ACT. with Chatham being the first column, New Jersey, and national, which is reported national by ACT. As part of this presentation, I also like to pull some alumni data. I'm able to retrieve data from the National Student Clearinghouse. National Student Clearinghouse receives post-secondary data from over 95% of the institutions in the country, and it gives us graduation data regarding those students. And when I took a look at the classes of 2010 to 2015, meaning the class of 2015 would have been in their fourth year, finished their fourth year of college in 2019. Our four-year graduation rate among students is 74%. What I would like to note is the national four-year graduation rate, it hovers around 40, low 40%. And that is a number that seems to be dropping, not necessarily growing. And the six-year graduation rate nationally hovers around 60%. So this is representative of our students. We're finding that our students are finding success in finishing college in 4 years. Not every student that takes more than 4 years is it of a concern. There's always a lot of variables that go into how long your college program could be. Your major, could be a double major, could be transferring, but this is the numbers as I see it from those 4 years. This chart represents our persistence, what they title persistence. It's students returning to college after their first year. And going back a number of years, we've always hovered at what I feel is a remarkable number in terms of kids, not just getting accepted into college, but getting there and doing well and returning. And lastly, this data represents students from 2010 to the class of 2018. They haven't updated this data set for 2019 yet, but these are the #1 matriculated schools by Chatham High School students going back for that 8-year period. And that's all. I'll answer any questions if you have them.
One point, not so much a question. One thing I did see on there was, just, I can't say, it was a trend, a couple that I picked up on were institutions where we had high applications, high acceptances, but very few kids actually enrolled.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that a lot of the trends in colleges, they are fixated on yield.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure how to protect the reputation of Chatham from utilizing schools as backup schools that will tend to negatively impact kids potentially that would like to go there.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be careful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the schools are now fixated on their yield ratios, which is
That's right.
the number of kids that are accepted and how many kids actually come, which is why
Mm-hmm.
we see a lot more schools moving towards ED1 and ED2 programs, because of the fact that they are much more interested now in understanding which kids actually want to go to their schools and spending.
Absolutely.
When you have 25,000 applications, how do you differentiate the kids if a lot of them look alike? So they go after the ones that are really focused on that school and that being their top choice. So I think I'm sure you guys are on top of that, but I notice that's a trend that I've seen. I don't know how we're handling that internally. I don't know how we're handling the fact that unfortunately our kids have to make bigger decisions now in terms of knowing what they potentially want to do or knowing what programs they want to be involved in. So it's not just so much, yes, it is, fit is the most important thing, but unfortunately because of trends in the acceptance of colleges, they are, again, fixated on understanding which kids want to be a part of that school and spending more time on their applications. So I'm not quite sure how you guys are handling that internally, what guidance you're giving the kids, but just that's one observation. Having gone through this now a number of times, but that's what we see.
Something we actually talk about a lot. So yield is getting harder and harder for colleges to predict, and that's why we're seeing such an increase in early decision. And some schools, admit 40, 50% of their students on early decision. So of course, with early decision, when we have students who go that route, we're working with them to, once they're accepted and decide to go, to make sure they withdraw their applications from those other schools, which opens up the pool for the kids in the regular decision. So we're reminding students to do that, which is, one piece of it. I really think that part of the process here is having students develop a manageable list of a smaller number of schools that are a target for them, that are a good fit for them, rather than sort of just spitballing applications out there, which then increases the candidate pool out there. And we talk about every single school on your list should be a school that you're willing to go to, that, you know, if this is what I'm accepted with, that I'm willing to attend those. So, but if we're seeing trends where kids have, 15, 18, 20 applications, and obviously their intention is to only go to one of those. Working with kids to make a more defined list is one area. But it is a challenge, because the trend of applying to a number of schools is not just something we're experiencing. And so that's why I'm seeing schools move quickly up that Barron's list, where they were, 2 years ago on just a competitive category. Now all of a sudden they're most competitive, because their application pool just shot up so much for that reason, because kids are adding 4, 5, 6 likelies to their list just to play it safe. So we're trying to come up with ways to address that.
One thing just quickly that I want, I guess, you or whoever at the high school to keep an eye on is just the demand on our guidance office during these crunch times. If these kids are applying to 2,000 plus schools and these applications need to get in letters of recommendation, that's a huge pull on our human resources there. And even just sending transcripts, and if we can keep an eye out, if there's anything we can do, if there's more help needed there to streamline this process. I don't see it getting I wish I could say that it's gonna get easier or better, but that's a lot of applications in a very short period of time, and that's on human beings to have to make sure that all gets done. So if there is a need, please let us know so we can assist where we can.
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next pair of presentations we have are also done on an annual basis right about this time, and they are the programs of studies presentations from our high school principal and middle school principal. And these entail any changes that there will be to the description of courses, the elective offerings, that sort of thing. Once this set of changes is presented tonight, then the high school and middle school will begin the process of informing families and students of the offerings that exist at each school. And then we fold right into the scheduling process so that we have all of our students scheduled before they leave for the end of the school year. So the first person to go tonight is Mr. Groh, and he will just touch on any of the changes to the Chatham High School offerings for next year.
Thank you. I do anticipate this presentation being slightly shorter than the graduation report. We'll start with our graduation requirements for the state of New Jersey. Across the state of New Jersey, any student graduating from a public high school needs to fulfill the amount of credits indicated here in the various areas. It does equate to 120 credits at a minimum. Most of our students, if they did not take a study hall, would be scheduled for 160 credits over the course of 4 years. Most of our students do take a study hall each year, so they have 140 credits that they're typically graduating with. The other requirement for our class of 2021 and 2022 are the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. They're required to take by state code ELA 9 and ELA 10. They must pass one of them. If they don't pass one of those two NJSLS assessments, they can use an alternative such as the pre-ACT, pre-SAT, SAT, ACT. And on the math field, we have Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. If they pass one of them, they've met the graduation requirement. If not, as long as they've taken all three, they can utilize one of the alternative assessments for the math as well to meet the graduation requirement. The top portion of the credits has not changed in a number of years. The bottom portion changes every couple of years as they assess how well those assessments are being completed throughout the state of New Jersey. Our course offerings is called our Program of Studies. All of our courses that we offer in the high school for students to select can be found in there with their course description. We offer our core requirement levels. We have college prep. We used to have it named a regular level, which was college prep, a concepts level, and a foundations level. We are making a change to our college prep courses. They'll be titled the course they are. Each one is English 9, biology, and we will be designating the letter A for the highest college prep level, B for the second highest college prep level, and C for our resource pullout level. We also have courses at the honors and advanced placement level as well. Our electives are, we have offerings in our core subjects and the related arts areas of art, business, computer education, design and media technology, family consumer science, music, and theater. And we also have a partnership with Eduseer, which is a virtual course provider. Students have the opportunity to partake in the online experience. Those courses are on our transcripts, but they don't go towards our GPA. So if there are courses we don't offer that they would like to have an experience in, they can choose to take it through the online experience. In most cases, they would take a study hall in their schedule, so they're able to work on that online course during that study hall. Last year, we had 97 courses that our students took either over the course of the summer or throughout a portion of the school year in 2018-19. Our proposed additions to our course offerings, we're looking for American Sign Language 3. We are in the third year of providing this as a language in Chatham High School, so it's just the next step in the sequence. We had one 2 years ago. We brought in American Sign Language 2 last year, and that group of students who are not graduating would be going into American Sign Language 3. We also have a new course in family consumer science called Fashion Design, Construction, and Textiles. Our early childhood course also, we will not be running our Kinder Cubs as we have. The numbers were way down this year, and we didn't have the resources necessary for our students to work in the elementary or in the early elementary classes the way that they had. So what we have done this year is we have a portion of our students working in partnership with Lafayette School, and they're working every third or fourth day, working with a fourth or fifth grade teacher down there. So that will become more of our connection, and in place of a section or two, we're hoping to fill the fashion design course. We also have had math applications in math and society as our math elective in the past. We're looking to combine those courses and create a discrete and business math course next year. Our enrollment in those two courses has not allowed us to run multiple sections of that course because of the interest. So what we're hoping for is combining those courses and adding the business math, which will be much more project-based and hands-on, that will have a greater area of interest for many of our students, and they'll select that discrete math, business math course. We also, for the first time, we have an agreement with Fairleigh Dickinson University where our students will have an opportunity for dual enrollment. What that means is, in these 4 courses that have been approved, we have a teacher here who is teaching our entrepreneurship, our TV production, our short films and design studio classes, and their certification meets the criteria that FDU sets, which is a master's degree, and a student may elect to pay Fairleigh Dickinson University for dual enrollment, which means they would, at the successful completion of their course at Chatham High School, also be eligible for 3 credits of that course on a Fairleigh Dickinson University transcript, which in some cases would transfer to a school that they choose to attend, or certainly would put them up, if they choose to attend Fairleigh Dickinson, they would have 3 or 6 credits under their belt if they're taking any of these courses. Our program of studies will be delivering the changes to our students this week. We'll be posting this on the website, and we'll be sending it out through email as well, so that they'll be well prepared to make course selection starting on February 11th with our juniors. And that's what we're looking at. Any questions? Okay.
Switch over to Jill Jaworski. Jill's
Thank
our
you.
middle school principal, and she'll do the same rundown of any of the changes to the course offerings at CMS.
So I'll try to go quickly because I hear there's a little bit of a football game happening tonight. So try to get out of here as quickly as I can to get you guys out. Okay, so Chatham Middle School Program of Studies. We have a couple of changes this year, a couple of additions. One is American Sign Language. Last year, we introduced American Sign Language in grade 6 as an academic course. And so those students will go into grade 7 as a full year world language course. And we'll again offer it in grade 6 as well. And for our 8th graders, we're going to continue to offer it as a cycle course for a marking period of American Sign Language for those students who want to have a little bit of exposure to it prior to going over to Chatham High School. We decided this year to add a bit of a description to our cycles courses. Those of you who have gone through the middle school and scheduled your students, there's always a lot of confusion between an elective versus a cycle. So we figured it would be really helpful to put a description of our cycles courses into our program of studies, also to let all of you know what our goals are through our cycles courses, that they're explorative, and we're looking to develop different habits of mind, such as collaboration, presentational literacy, creative expression, problem solving, and it's really a different focus. It's not that it's a different focus from what we've been doing, but we're just trying to hone in a little bit more on the exact skills that we feel will be beneficial to students moving forward. So we've had computer-aided drawing in our program of studies for a couple of years, and this year we're changing that course to Digital Fab Lab. We realize that we do use CAD software in that course, but we also spend a lot of time on developing prototypes based on what they design through their CAD program. So the Fab Lab is referring to the fabrication that they do in prototyping, 3D printers, laser engravers, vinyl cutters. So it's not just the use of the CAD programming, it's actually the development of their prototypes as well. Again, another slight tweak on a course that we've had for a couple of years, iSTEM, which is a 6th grade required cycle course, is now going to be called Creative Problem Solving. It's really a course that's designed to enable students to look at different situations, work collaboratively to see how they would tackle the situation, how they handle it if it doesn't work, how they work together to try to fix the problem, and how they reflect and take the skills that they've developed and trying to tackle this problem moving forward when they're faced with other different situations as well. So it's just a tweak to the name, and it's really just really designed to help students tackle different real-life situations and work together to do so. Robotics, we've also changed that name a little bit too to Robotic Design Studio. I think a lot of times people think of robotics as programming of robots, and that's kind of all that they do in there, which is quite a bit. But basically what we're doing now is we're looking at real life situations and real life problems, and we're using our robotic design process and our robots to tackle some of those problems as well. So again, another emphasis on creative problem solving and collaboration among students. Probably the biggest change to our program of studies that we're proposing for next year is increasing the amount of time that students have in health. Our middle school, actually our district as a whole, is really focusing a lot on the social and emotional growth of our students. And we feel that our health classes are a terrific opportunity to be able to tackle some of those issues and skills that we really feel that we need to spend as much time as possible working on with our students, especially adolescents in the middle school. So currently we have cycles of health where students are pulled out of phys ed for 25 days, and we're proposing that we put them in health for 41 days for an entire marking period and give our teachers and our students an opportunity to work on different types of skills that will foster their social and emotional wellness. And that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Mike, registration.
Yeah, the only other item under my report is just to note that we began our kindergarten registration today. That will last about 2 weeks. I say about because this time of the year we have inclement weather sometimes, and folks who become sick with something like the flu or a cold or what have you. So sometimes that spills over beyond 2 weeks, and then we roll into our first grade registration. Once we have a handle on our kindergarten and first grade numbers for next year, then we can better project the number of classroom sections we'll need at each of the K-3 buildings, and that will in turn determine our ability to offer full-day kindergarten. We are sure we can offer 2 more sections like we're doing this year, but in the event that we want to expand that to a 3rd section or even a 4th section, that really is all dependent upon how many students register in kindergarten and first grade. So once we have that done, there will be announcements forthcoming about the potential full-day kindergarten application process. And that's it for my report.
1 minute.
Sure, the construction update, the only project we have going on is the middle school auditorium. The substantial completion date now unfortunately has been moved to February 14th. The main delays were the steel, yes, I know. She was made well aware of it last week when we found out. Main delay was due to the installation of the catwalk where the steel vendor had to fabricate the steel, and the other delay was the stage rigging where the manufacturer sent the incorrect parts, so they had to remanufacture to send the correct parts. That was what they're coming up with. That was the best estimate I got as of last Wednesday. The next construction meeting is the 21st. So I'll have a better update for the next meeting for Jill. That's all I have.
All right, committee reports, personnel.
We met just prior to this meeting. Basically just talked about any changes in personnel and some confidential personnel issues, situations. We are meeting again on February 10th.
Ms. Clark?
Curriculum has not met since our last meeting, and I believe curriculum is not meeting the 10th. I don't have the date, and Karen's not here.
Finance facility is the same thing. When are we meeting again?
I believe February 3rd.
February 3rd. Oh, I will not be there.
We're meeting February 3rd too, Michelle.
Policy and planning, Mr. Kenny is not here. Liaison meetings, does anybody have anything?
Back up, Mike can do policy.
What's that? Oh, when did we do that, today?
We met today.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
sorry about
Policy met today. We discussed a couple of changes. Well, number one, we have a student tuition policy for out-of-district students. We agreed that we would review those on a case-by-case basis. We're reviewing 2 of those cases. There were some Strauss-Esme changes to the identification of the name of the school, superintendent's duties, and student transportation. And we're reviewing the substance abuse policy to address any issues that may come up regarding the use of medical marijuana. That's it.
Anyone within the liaison reports have something to say? Okay, moving on. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 16th public session.
The only abstention is Mr. Gilfillan that I need.
Where was I? No idea. Okay, I abstain.
The minutes from the regular session, minutes from 12:16. Ms. Chigarelli.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Valenti.
Yes.
Mr. Gilfillan.
Yes. Oh, no, abstain,
Minutes
sorry.
passed 5-0-1.
Now it's our opportunity for public commentary. There's a notice of public comment time limit. Hearing of citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. There will be a second opportunity for this after we go through our action items. So if you would like to say something, please come to the mic. Hurry up, you.
Yes, we're looking at you, Carlin.
I'll be quick.
Glad you dressed up.
I'll be real brief. What I'm here to request is some Friday night lights.
That's me, Chris Carlin.
Oh, I didn't know the rules. I apologize. I'm Chris Carlin, and I live on Jackson Avenue in Chatham. Good to go? Okay. So listen, I'm here to request for some lighting, some temporary lighting at the field. I know this has come up in the past, but the request this time is a little bit different. The reason being is I've read the policy that affects the lights at Cougar Field, and the policy only deals with permanent lighting. It doesn't address what we're allowed to do with temporary lighting. So I want to kind of put that out there right now. There's a request to have several Friday night football games. For me, what's important is that the issue is not just about football. These lights can be used by the boys and girls soccer, other sports programs. One thing that's important that I want the Board of Ed to know is we're not here to ask for money. The youth program has agreed to pay for these temporary lights for these 4 different weekends. So I know this has come up in the past, but it's something that I think we're trying to take a different approach to right now. So it's not a funding request, it's not a permanent lighting request. I want to make sure that's clear. There's a lot of benefits to this too, and as a Board of Ed meeting, I thought it was important to point out that, you know, from a scheduling standpoint, it's interesting to move the games to Friday night so it doesn't interfere with any of the SAT or ACT testing on Saturdays. There's also other reasons that are important as well. There's some religious holidays that fall on the Saturdays as well. So there's multiple benefits to the community. I'm just going to point out the things that I wanted to get to, and I'm going to turn it over to Wendy Kuppenheimer, who also has some thoughts on how it can benefit Chatham as a whole in the community. But I wanted to just set the groundwork right there and make sure those points are heard. This is a different request because it's temporary lighting, and we're not looking for money. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Wendy. Thank you very much. I have to sign it? Oh, jeez. I have a purple pen to sign this with.
Hi, I'm Wendy Kuppenheimer, 316 Lafayette Avenue in Chatham. I just wanted to talk about how we feel this would benefit the community, and first start with the players. We have sons on the team, and I think they would all tell you that they just get really excited when there's night lights. They did well. Their best games were under the lights, and hopefully this would not just be true of the football team, but would be true of other teams, as we said. Hopefully, you know, the soccer, maybe field hockey. I was actually talking to someone whose children run cross country and track, and they were saying they had an idea of running a mile race under the lights on a Saturday night. So we just feel like there's benefits that way. We also felt that when we did have these night games, even when we had one in Madison, they were very well attended by Chatham students and parents, and it's just a good way to bring the community together. It's something to do on a Friday night that brings a lot of people together and brings a sense of community and spirit. And it seems like, you know, a simple thing. It would just be maybe 4 or 5 weekends. It's, you know, like we said, the cost is covered. It just seems like something that would be really beneficial to the community as a whole. Thank you.
With that being said, Mike or Pete, can you just offer up guidance as they want to make a formal, is there something that needs to go through as a formal proposal? Is it done, since we don't have an AD, or how would it work if an organization like this would like to try to ask for additional night lights for games on Friday versus Saturday for other opportunities? What's the formal process that they need to go through to try to get approval?
I think to a certain degree, this is a formal process. There's a formal request here in public to the board. The board can discuss it. I'll remind everyone that this has been a subject of a decade's worth of litigation, and that litigation is open to a certain degree, so I don't feel comfortable talking about details relative to lights. There are a number of different legal opinions or differing legal opinions about light structures, be they temporary or permanent, and the controlling ordinances that dictate how those structures are used. So we last left off with an attorney out of Essex County who we would probably need to enlist again to visit or explore this subject. But I think that there's a request right now, and the board can take that request into committee and look at our facilities use policy 7510 and regulation, and can look at our legal documentation and consult with board counsel.
All right, so we need to go, and we'll take a look at this from a perspective of how we handle it on Cougar Weekend, any kind of existing, either kind of verbal agreements or anything in place. I mean, I've read the policy too. I do know all the surrounding issues that we've been involved with from Madison perspective, but we will put it into the committee structure and go from there.
One thing I would ask is, the only time I know we have lights is on Cougar Weekend, but I do know during that weekend, and probably because it is the nature of Cougar Weekend, we have additional police on site. Would that be something that we need to look at in terms of, I think we need to look at it in its full picture. I know Cougar Weekend is a little different because there's a lot of activities and it's a full, extensive weekend. But I think we, yeah, we don't have lights in the parking lot, so I just want to be comprehensive in our approach and just making sure we have exactly what we need if this were to go in any type of direction, so that we're covered on all ends. And then I also think if we have a board council now, could you please reach out to who we have currently and see what guidance they would provide us, in which direction to best pursue. Thank you.
On the agenda for the policy committee?
Or finance facilities.
Or finance?
I think it'd be a combination of both.
I think both.
Yeah.
When do you meet next, policy?
We just met.
But facilities
We
means
got some time.
February 3rd.
Right.
Yeah. You know, Mike, you're on finance with me, so we'll put it on the agenda for the 3rd, okay? All right, thank you. All right, nobody else? Oh, no, we do. We gotta be a little quicker with me running the meeting.
Can we change our nominations?
I'm learning. I'm Amy Reale, and I am living in the borough in Highland. And I'm just here to report quick dates. We had to reschedule our December joint meeting just because of normal December attendance issues. So we've rescheduled for January 22nd, which is a Wednesday night. So I'll point that out. We usually do it Thursday. And then our next two, if we keep the same format that we agreed to as last year, our next two would be March 5th, which is a Thursday, and June 4th. And at those two meetings, we're the CBAG group, I don't know if they have already, but sending out a request to do something similar we did last year, which we had Dr. Lanza and I don't know if it's Mrs. Rocco or Dr. Rocco come and do a joint presentation on the ELA program. And so this year we thought it would be helpful to have the math programs represented by Ms. Winters and Dr. Jaffe, perhaps. So, and then the other second thing that CPEG thought would be fruitful for our joint meeting is to talk about some of the new changes that have happened curriculum-wise with the executive function curriculum that we understand has been added. So maybe having someone speak to that and what the goals are of that program, who it involves student-wise, and who's teaching it. So those are the dates and for the upcoming meetings. And then I was just going to report that our task force met. This is an effort to collaborate with the district specifically on areas concerning dyslexia and to put together a joint newsletter, which we did and sent out in the fall. And now it's been a request that that will just be a CPEG-produced newsletter if we do something in the future. And then we had a report that the staff education, we had a speaker come. We worked with the district to have a speaker come. Every year, teachers listen to a mandated 2-hour or watch a video on dyslexia. And this year we did instead a speaker who came. And so Dr. Lanza said that that was on the whole well received. And so anyway, we're looking to continue stuff like that. That's sort of getting at, there's a lot of intersection in why we like to do the joint meetings. There's a lot of intersection where general ed and special ed meet. And this is one of them. In first grade, you know, you want every teacher, not a special ed teacher, to understand maybe if there's a struggling reader at the top of the spelling test, not to write, you know, did you try hard enough? This, you know, big red pen ink, and just little things like that where teachers just need to know some of the ins and outs of dyslexia. So hopefully we're making some positive changes in that area. And that's it.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Action items, Ms. Ciccarelli.
I'd like to move agenda items A1 to A19 on your regular agenda. However, item A4, the correct attachment is an attachment, not on the regular agenda. We also have an audible.
Yes, in addition, action item number 8, the facts to indicate a reduced FTE of 0.60.
Okay. Oh, I'll second it. Okay, Pete.
Agenda items A1 through A19, addendum item A3, A21, A22, and adjustment to A8. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti? Yes. And Mr. Gilpin?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 6-0.
Yes, Finance Facilities, I'd like to move action items B1 through 27 on your regular agenda.
Second.
A couple of my favorite ones, Chatham Middle School, General Mills box tops, $69 for the use. No idea. Whatever Joe wants to do with it. Milton Avenue School, same thing for use by the principal. $34. I always like these little things. I have no idea what to do. And last but not least, Jill Weber. She's not here, but her usual donation to the school district of $50 to her Bank of America Charitable Foundation matching contribution. Okay, Pete.
Agenda items B1 through B27. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti? Yes. Mr. Gilpin?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 6-0.
Michelle, will you take curriculum?
I move curriculum items C1 and 2.
Second.
There is a little bit of an oversight here in that you should approve the programs of studies that were just presented.
Okay.
And that's
You
where-
do that on an annual basis, but because these are some changes that would affect the offerings
Okay,
that
for
kids can choose
curriculum.
from.
So
you
as an
should-
audible into the
Is
curriculum?
there an
Yeah,
audible?
just approval of the
Okay.
Chatham High
So
School.
add
Chatham
number
Middle
3
School program.
Add
on the audible? Pete?
Yeah, noted down.
Okay.
Okay.
Program of studies. And we'll add the full resolution for board, based on the recommendation of the superintendent approves the program of studies for the school year 2020-2021. Wow.
Yes.
And that will be C3.
Yep.
All right. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Our agenda items C1, 2, and 3. Ms. Chicarelli, Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Valenti,
Yes.
and Mr. Gilfillan.
Yes.
Passed 6-0.
Nothing in policy. I'm going to pull an executive decision and not allow anything in board business tonight. There's a second chance for public commentary. Mr. Heap, would you have anything to say? Mr. Heap, how did the Christmas sale go? How were your Christmas sales this year?
Went very well. We had about 20 trees left.
I did see them on the side of the road.
Consider that a sellout.
Yeah.
We had a couple of weather days that conspired against us, but otherwise, it was a good sale.
And I would also like to ask, what was your inventory figure down from a year ago? You had come in and said that you were worried about your tree levels.
All the tree, well, as it turned out, we did get Fraser firs.
You
Much
did?
to my surprise, the truck arrived and they were on, and they disappeared in a hurry.
Okay, well done.
So we got all the trees we asked for.
Okay, great. Congratulations. Anybody else? Okay. How this?
Action will not be taken.
Okay, action will not be taken, so we don't need to reconvene. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Go Tigers.